What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fresh Podcast, where we talk about everything fresh in entertainment. This week we are back again with Star Wars, and so join with me are everyone's favorite Star Wars fan. First up is Randy,
Hey guys,
and then we also got Seth joining us again.
I'm ready to talk about Star Trek.
There you go.
Oh,
There you go. He already sounding a little robotic. Perfect.
yeah.
But yeah,
I'm,
so
I'm C-3PO. From Star Trek?
yes, from Star
Yeah.
Trek.
I don't know any robot characters in Star Trek. Like I don't even know if
Data.
there are robots.
There
like
are-
android
there-
data.
Data. I was
Alright.
like, I knew his name. I just couldn't think of it. I was like, there's one that looks like a human.
Is he is he the one that like?
We're not
everyone
doing Star Trek. No, I'm going to the topic.
on YouTube.
Welcome. We're talking about Andor. We're not getting sidetracked again. We are not doing this again.
Listen, we're gonna eat that time. We're gonna make sure this thing goes for like 2 hours somehow.
Yeah, okay. But yes, we are talking about Andor, which, as most Star Wars fans know, is the new Star Wars show coming to Disney Plus. And if you guys want to know our opinions on the previous Disney Plus shows, I believe we have done an episode on that. But now it's this new one. It is a much darker show, very much more geared towards adults, and also not an incredibly popular character to put a show behind. I mean, Cassian Andor was in one movie and one movie alone, and we know very much how he ended up at the end of that. So it's interesting that they chose this character to kind of base the show around. But before I get into too many specifics, I guess just general thoughts. How are you guys feeling? Seth, how did you like the first 3 episodes?
I feel it's promising. One thing I've kind of said, and this is kind of how my feeling on like all Disney Plus shows is like they usually have like kind of slow starts, and I kind of feel the same way here. But I see potential. I like the tone. I like the direction they seem to be going in. So we'll see. I'm still like I wouldn't say hesitant, just curious. I'm more curious than anything.
Okay. Randy, what about you?
I'm enjoying it so far, but I mean that's kind of par for the course for me for the most part because I'm like a huge ass Star Wars dork. But I know initially I talked to my boyfriend Will and I was like, hey, Andor came out today and they dropped 3 episodes. Do you want to watch this? And he was like, nah, I'm not that interested. I started watching it about halfway through the first episode. I was like, okay, this is like a spy thriller type of mystery situation thing going on here. He's going to like this. And so I stopped watching, and then I went and got him, and I was like, hey, you want to watch this. And he was also really enjoying it. So for people, it's something different in the Star Wars universe. We haven't really had a spy movie or TV show or anything like that from Star Wars, so maybe it'll drag in a new audience.
Not since Rogue One, anyways.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's a war movie. Anyway.
Honestly, I don't even know if I would even call it. I don't know exactly what you would call it, but yeah, I don't even know if spy is the correct term because it's almost just like they're more like a criminal underground at the start of this. Because something I did want to talk about. Oh, go ahead.
To be fair, like this is like I feel like we're still in like very early like origin story phase right now, so we're probably not going to get the full scope of like what the tone is until we get further in. Especially since this is like already confirmed as like the longest running live action Disney Plus show because I think this is getting 12 episodes.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah,
I'll say this. I think I
probably
disagree with you in the sense of.
out.
I disagree with you in the sense of I think I can already pick up on what the tone is, and that's kind of I kind of picked up more on this in like one of essentially the first scene where he goes up and he goes into the bar, and he meets these guys, and I'm thinking like, okay, traditional Star Wars stuff. They'll get into a little bar fight, and he'll beat him up, but no one will die, or it'll just kind of show like, oh, this character's a badass, whatever. And that's not exactly what happens. That he walks away, he leaves, and then they follow him into a back alley, and then he accidentally kills one of the guards. Like he hits his head on the ground, and then just in cold blood takes the gun that he found and just shoots another one straight in the head. And I just remember thinking, like, this is a very, like, dark opening for Star Wars. Like, this is our main character essentially just murdered 2 cops, and we're all okay. Like, they were, you know, kind of being jerks, but one of them was really begging for his life before he shot him. And so,
yeah. And I mean, like, I feel like that scene in particular, I just want to, like, help build a little bit more on top of it. Is like, that is such like a, I feel like it's as brutal as actually a similar scene in Rogue One, and I think that's kind of like the point.
yeah, that's what I
is
was
to show, like,
getting to.
Andor. It's like, yeah, Andor, because like in the scene, like Andor does hesitate to shoot the second guy. The first guy was killed by accident. He fell on his head. And then he hesitates and obviously thinks about it, and then ultimately shoots the guy. Versus, like, there is no thinking in a similar scene in Rogue One. He just straight up, like, kills the dude because he knows he's dead weight.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. So thanks for stealing my point.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, he does stop there, and then there's even a scene later, like in the series, where he has the chance to shoot someone in the back of the head, but he just leaves them untied. Versus the only other appearance we've seen of Cassian was, you know, he shot his own friend in the back because he didn't think both of them could escape. So he's still, it's very interesting, like, point in this character where he's not, like, you know, completely against killing someone, but he's still in a morally gray thing, or like he wants to at least think about it. Like, he's hesitant because he's just nervous and he doesn't want to kill someone. So I think this is a really interesting point, and that's why I'm thinking, like, this will have a much more darker tone and go down a few more darker and grimier paths than we're used to in Star Wars. Because it's showing this character that, hey, rebellions are not pretty. Like, people are going to need to get shot in the back and, you know, sabotage and all this, and we're going to be building this character up to be the one that does that, to be the one we meet in Rogue One, who's willing to just get the job done, kill anyone that needs to be killed. Which is a very interesting point, because again, we're talking about Star Wars, where there's, you know, lightsabers and magic force and light space and all this stuff, where it's not as, you know, violent and grimy. And I think the show is kind of taking Star Wars at a bit more of like a darker tone. But I ran on a little bit. Randy, what do you think of Cassian in these first couple episodes? You know, is he that different from how we see him in Rogue One, or do you think it's pretty much the same dude?
I definitely see what point you were making to begin with, having it be someone who hesitates initially. I don't think he wanted to kill either of those men in the opening scene of this show. It just kind of came down to almost I'm stuck in this mess, you know, I don't think there's going to be a way to get out of this, so other than just run and leave no loose ends.
Yeah.
But other than that, at least what I've been shown so far, he seems roughly the same character. He becomes more of that character that is willing to do what it takes, is willing to lie more. I mean, already in this show, he starts out, that was one of the reasons I grabbed Will, as I was just like, oh, there's so many characters just putting lies on top of lies, and I think that'll be, I don't know, interesting to see how those lies play out, who gets caught, you know, in their lie, you know, who figures something, you know, figures out that the other person's lying, stuff like that. So I was just interested in that aspect. But other than, I guess, being slightly more hesitant, I feel like he's the same character so far. I'm enjoying the backstory stuff we're getting from him.
When you say backstory stuff, do you mean like when he's like the times where it flashes back to like him as a kid?
Yes, the flashbacks.
Okay, yeah. All right. Seth, how did, you know, let's go back to the first try to take this one episode at a time. How did you feel about that? Just the first episode, beyond the cold open.
I really like. Well, damn, that's what I wanted to go with.
All right, well then we can talk.
Open.
What do you feel about the cold open?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I think it does. Like, I probably should have clarified my point. Maybe not tone. I think I get the general idea of the tone. Maybe not like quite the genre, which doesn't really matter. We have to group this thing up into a genre. But the tone of it feels like a sort of sci-fi noir film. Like that starting opening shot where it's like him walking across this. It's like bridge, it's rainy, and all these like lights passing him by, and then there's the city glowing in the background. Like, it reminded me so much of like Blade Runner, which is awesome film, love it. So I really like that. I do like the more griminess of the feel of the show. Like, I like that it doesn't like shy away from like more darker elements. Like, I feel like a Star Wars movie would probably talk around like, it's not a brothel, it's a place where people go to. It's like, no, it's a brothel. Like, I
or
like
just
that
say it's a bar or something, because there's already plenty of that, or just a club.
Yeah, it does basically add like a more like darker feel to the show. As for Andor, like, he does feel like a lot more character here than he does in Rogue One. Mostly because, like, one, we're seeing the progression of how he gets to that point in Rogue One, but also, like, to be fair, if that movie is already stacked with a bunch of other characters, I don't think there was too many moments where he got to shine on his own as a character, it's one of my favorite movies, but I will say that its strongest elements probably wasn't its characters. So I feel like Andor is a good opportunity to like flesh that out. Overall, I like it. Things feel a little bit slow. We're kind of stuck on this like disgusting looking scrap planet.
Yeah.
Which is better here than Tatooine.
I mean, I kind of like this setting. I think the dirty, grimy scrap planet fits that noir kind of style. Like, I don't think this would work if we were in like Coruscant or like a.
No, I think it could totally work in Coruscant, but it'd be a different.
If we were in Coruscant, it would be like the underbelly. But I feel like at that
it'd be
point,
like spice running and stuff like that, maybe.
And
or like spice trade.
I don't hate like crappy little scrap planet, like not at all. Like, I think that is a good place to start. I just don't think we're gonna be here forever. Like, especially with like the ending of like the 3 episodes. Yeah, we're definitely like moving beyond this place.
As of this point, only the first 3 episodes are out, and I get why, because after watching the 3, they are very much all connected. But yeah, it seems like episode 4, they're like setting up like, okay, we're going to the next area, like wherever that leads.
But like, I will say that like so far with like the show, I think the big pulling point is going to be like the characters and their journeys and where they're going for. And I'm interested to see what Andor develops into. I think this show is going to develop him more to being like in my eyes, like a sort of like spy badass that we didn't really get to see as much of in Rogue One. We got glimpses of it, but not as much as maybe some of us would like. So that's kind of cool. I also really like Luthen, this potential mentor character he's going to have. My one, other than that though, I really, I can't say I really care for too much of the characters so far in this show, other than Andor and Luthen. Maybe Bix, the scrap lady, who's kind of like also looks like a rebellion recruiter, and I guess his adoptive mother. I can't think of her name, but the scrapper who like kind of adopted him. Yeah. I think she's interesting, but beyond that, I don't really care for too much of the cast right now. And even Bix is kind of a stretch. It's like, do I really care about her? It's like, not really.
I think she'll definitely.
Do you care about B2 Emo?
I was about to. the droid.
The droid? He's so cute.
He also is really slow, and I kind of like that. That he's a little derpy and just like, I don't have sufficient power. I cannot conform a lie. And it's like, you stupid old droid.
I do think that he has like a really cool droid design. I mean, obviously, Star Wars has been on fire with all their droid designs. I can't think of one that was really bad. So like, he's just gonna join that pantheon like
BB-8 and
BB-8.
All right, calm down. He is nothing compared to BD. All right, no one will be as good as Buddy. Calm down.
We still got time.
He has some pretty big shoes to fill. Buddy is great. Anyway.
But yeah, like he's a cute little droid. But like but if we're speaking seriously though, like this whole like Bix's boyfriend is jealous and whatever. It's like I don't care, to be honest. It's cool that they explicitly seem to show like an actual sex scene. Well, they didn't show a sex scene, but they're at least a little bit more explicit about it than Star Wars typically is.
Yeah, they
so
were like,
nice.
oh, they did the deed.
Yeah, and it's just like that's cool. You got a little bit of Ripley, like kind of like Ripley-esque nudity here too. That was nice.
A little bit, but yeah. I didn't mind like that little like jealousy plot because I kind of like that. Like, honestly, this story, there were so many little details that led to him having to leave planet and be an escort. So I'm like, I was okay with it, and I think it works because I do agree. Right now, Biggs's character isn't as interesting, but I think it's gonna be really interesting the next couple episodes to see how she'll develop, because that was, jumping ahead to episode 3. I know we're kind of jumping all over the place, but I just want to bring this one moment up, is when, she's, chained up against the wall, and these very aggressive security guards, which I'll get onto them later.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'll save that question for later, because that's a different topic, but, spoilers, Biggs' boyfriend gets shot, and like right in front of her. So I think it'll be really interesting to see where her character develops after that moment, because that was and by gosh, what a gruesome scene for her. Like, she's just chained up against a wall, he gets shot, and then she can't even like go over to him because she's stuck there. And like even when she gets unstuck, they have to drag her away, and like she can't even just look at him. So that's I think her character will be a bit more fleshed out. But speaking of other characters, and his name I'm trying to find. I believe it is Syri Karn. But essentially, the main villain, or at least the main villain of these first couple episodes, is this kind of lieutenant for this security group. They're not exactly the Empire, but they work with them. And just a dude that's just taking his job way too seriously. And, really gunning for justice and promotion, and just kind of spirals his way into nothingness. And I don't know. He's a very interesting character. I think he's going to be a good character to hate. Like, you're not supposed to like him. You're supposed to be like, gosh, I just want this man to get shot in the back of the head. But I think the actor does a really good job with him, and it'll kind of be interesting because I'm gonna be pretty sure this character is gonna either go mad or do some more crazy shit.
I hope he doesn't get redeemed.
Yeah, I also kind of agree with that. I don't want him to like get a redemption story, because Star Wars is all about that. And I'm like, no, I'm kind of okay if this guy like stays a lunatic, and then just is a crazy guy.
I actually, now that I mentioned, there is one character I really like, and this is his character, because I think he is a fascinating like archetype for a villain. What's his name again? Cirrus?
Yeah, or Cyril Karn, Syrl. However you say that.
Welcome to Star Wars.
Yeah.
That sounds more like Cyril. I'm gonna call him Cyril because whatever.
I don't know. You could also just call him the lieutenant, because I think that's what everyone just calls him lieutenant.
The Corpo.
Yeah.
I'll call him the Corpo.
Corpo.
Anyways, so like this Corpo dude, I like him just because like right from the get-go, he's like takes his job very seriously. Obviously, he's very buttoned up, and then everybody else is like, bro, just chill. You're putting in way too much effort into this job.
Like, we do not get paid enough for this.
And what fascinates me is like, in a way, they're kind of right. Like, let me not get ahead. I like this character just because he obviously thinks he's like, I'm better than all than this like corpo like security post. Like, he has all the makings of being like I guess the ideal Imperial officer. He has a sense of superiority. He thinks he's better than everybody else. He's always trying to push everyone to do work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he is like, once you see their actual mission to go get Andor, they bring in like 12 friggin' dudes, and it backfires horribly for them. And I love that. Like, they are so incompetent, especially him. And I really like that. I do think he will be pushed to madness. I think after what Andor, like how Andor and Luthen escaped from that planet, I think that like definitely like I think he might go mad just from the sheer embarrassment of what that did to him.
Yeah.
Especially since he like lost all those men. Especially like the scene that really does it of like how incompetent he is his stupid little like the
His
I don't want to
speech?
like right before his speech, it's that dude that was super agreeing with him a bunch, the little
Yeah.
chubby dude.
Yeah, that is, would you like to learn that name? 'Cause that is Lieutenant Minos Mosk. Or just
I'm going to call him Barney. I'm going to call him Barney Fife because he reminds me of Barney Fife from the Andy Griffith Show. He's like
I wonder how much of our audience will know that.
I don't think,
Yeah,
I
that's
barely understand what, like, I know what it is, but I was like, gosh.
Just a dopey cop.
I mean,
He's
yes, I know.
basically a
Wow.
really
I mean, other than
dopey
like our
cop
Uncle
cop.
Doug, who else would know this? I'm surprised you knew who that is.
I watched a lot of Andy Griffith as a kid.
Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, he's like an evil, like he's like an evil, arguably even more incompetent Barney Fife. And I just like, oh my god, that stupid little the stupid little face he had whenever he's given this speech, like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm just like, God, you're all gonna die. And I was right. Well, for the most part, I was right. So I think this villain's interesting because like in Star Wars, we always get these like take Rogue One for example. We had Krennic, like you know, obviously competent, maybe a little over his head, but he kind of knows what he's doing, and he's like prideful and all this. It's kind of cool to see a villain in Star Wars that is prideful, but also just kind of
Really bad at his job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Just
way over his head. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic. And it might be cool to see how far like he kind of pushes himself to maybe the point of madness going after Andor. That could be fun. So I'm already in love with this villain just because it's like this is an interesting dynamic that we just don't typically see.
We'll definitely get more onto when we talk about episode 3. We'll definitely get more into what actually happens to him. But Ray, to go back to you before we like talk specifically about episode 2. What were there any other like, kind of like standout characters for you? I know we kind of like went over a bunch of them, but was there anyone that like you thought, whether it was like during like the kids from like the past saga or maybe when they're actually adults?
I guess in the way of standout
Yeah.
characters that we haven't mentioned, less so, because we already brought up his like adopted mother.
Yeah.
I think she's going to be a quite important character moving forward. But in the regards to like ones we haven't mentioned, I feel like a lot of characters end up just kind of being like, yeah, they're there.
Yeah.
At least so far. You know, we're 3 episodes in, you know.
Yeah.
A lot can change, yeah.
So we'll see. I hope. You know what I hope? I hope that whoever that big like really derpy alien was, that was like. Do you guys remember the scene where like Andor's walking down the alley and this one dude stops him?
Yeah.
He's like, "You owe me money," and then this big dude shows up. And was like, "You got what's his name? Like Krillic? Like you got Krillic into this?" He's like, "How much is he paid?" She's like, "He just told me to stay here and be here."
Maybe.
And then I was like, "Okay, I'm leaving." I hope that guy shows up again. I loved that dude. I don't remember.
Big dude.
And it's so hard to find his name because I'm looking at IMDb and like, there's no way I'm finding who by that dude's voice. Like,
Oh yeah.
that guy was funny. But okay, but going more onto episode 1 is a lot of setting up these characters. We see a little bit about his past, and honestly, episode 2 isn't. It is the shortest of the 3, only beating 37 minutes, and that one's more just him. You know, convincing Biggs to like, hey, call your friend. I need someone down here. I got this super special box he wants. He has the mother's box, and
What's in the box?
a call back to our freaking to the
Justice
League. Yeah, thank you. And she's like, okay, I will. And then there's the plot line of them, and it's a lot of setup for it. And I don't know if there's like a single blaster fired or a single action scene in 2. It's very much just a lot of people talking and just people running around trying to get telling secrets, hiding things. So I'll ask you guys, how did you guys feel about, you know, specifically, because we know what happens in episode 3, but specifically 2, where the entire almost 30 minutes is just set up. I'll ask Renee the last question. So, Seth, how did you feel about episode 2?
So this is, I think, probably maybe one of the downsides of watching this all in like a blitz of 3 episodes in a row.
Yeah.
Is, to be honest, I can't tell you the difference of what happens in episodes 1, 2, or 3. I can kind of get a rough idea based on the order of events, but because I watch it all together, it felt like watching like one movie.
Yeah.
So it all kind of just blends together. So whatever happened in episode 2 didn't really bother me because I already had episode 3 ready to go.
I think that's also probably why they did 3 episodes right at the start, like right off the bat, because well, we need this setup, just like introducing these characters, and then this episode 2 is just more build up, and 3, it's even titled The Reckoning. That's when everything actually happens. So yeah,
I think this is the first time we see his his adoptive mother. I really need to figure out what her name is. This is the first time we actually see her.
Yes,
it's like
it is.
Ava or something like that.
Her name is gosh dang it, Star Wars. Maarva.
Marva.
It's just, but why are there 2 A's? But yeah, anyway, it's
because Star Wars. That's why.
It's
Marva,
and then
his with 2 eyes or something.
And then,
or it's
listen,
with 2 M's.
you ever try to write fictional names for a fictional universe?
Okay.
You gotta just come up with weird stuff.
Well, that's fine, but then her husband is named Clem, just Clem. That's how I would spell that name. So it's it just varies.
They should have named her. They should have just named her Tam then. That she could be Tangerine and he could be Clem.
Yeah,
Clementine.
Yeah, like Clementine. Yeah, just go the Dragon Ball way of naming everything after fruits and vegetables. There you go. But yeah,
that works for me.
Episode 2 is where you actually do meet. He references his mom, but this is actually where you meet Marva.
Actually, I do kind of want to. Now that I think about it, I do want to point out it's very interesting, and I wonder how much we're going to learn about it. Is about Andor's, I guess, village or tribe or whatever that he was from.
Yeah.
His people. One thing I noticed right off the bat is these are all just kids. There's no adults
no
here.
parents.
Apparently,
Apparently,
teenagers.
it's a mining accident that happened that wiped out everyone in the mine. So I assumed all their parents mined.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just a bunch
okay.
of them. Wow.
What gets me the most is I thought that because they're using blowpipes and they seem to be wowed by the ship. I thought are they some sort of primitive group of people who don't know? That's why they didn't react at all when the dude with the blaster woke up and shot one of their own.
They did I also thought this is kind of maybe. It could have been a bit more of a primitive world compared to the rest of Star Wars. I also do the joke I thought of all the miners in the world died, so the world was just left with miners. I love it. I'm clipping that one. But yeah, it's a bit, everyone's using blowpipes. And I've also found it interesting that, and not a lot of TV shows or movies do this, is they are not speaking English when they are in these scenes. And
yeah, they don't have subtitles at all.
Yeah, and there's no
you just
subtitles.
have to figure it out.
So you just,
which I liked.
And yeah,
which is one of the reasons I liked kind of the flashbacks, just to be okay, let's you have to pay attention and figure out contextually what's happening. Yeah. Roughly, what do you think they're saying?
Yeah,
I think it's
that is cool. Especially since props to always for these crazy people out there who obviously hires a team of writers. Just your job is only just to come up with a made up language. That's all you're here for.
Just start making noises. But yeah, really.
No, listen. You know how nerds are these days. The first thing they do when they come across a new language or whatever is that they start to decipher it. That they're listen, we got to make this into some sort of functional language, because every Star Wars nerd is well, we got to make the Wikipedia article that explains what their freaking language means.
Well,
I'm sure it's up there.
Yeah,
it's probably up right now.
But if I like to imagine if you actually do translate it, it's just them saying all Star Wars fans are nerds. the government's a lie, or like birds aren't real, or like just some wild.
Birds work for the government.
Yeah, birds work for the government or something. Um,
You take all the words that they said in the show and you actually translate it, and it means you wasted your damn time.
yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure there's like a video game Easter egg about that too, or something wild.
Okay,
like.
this is a weird aside, but like I feel like they could kind of get away with something like that because I remember as a kid playing Knights of the Republic where they had like the aliens speak their alien language. But here's the thing: they would actually play the same voice line over and over and over for each of the aliens. It would just read something different in like the subtitles, like what they're actually saying, and then what the voice line is. It's like the same, like like whatever. It's always the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, because it'd take a long time to voice multiple different takes of alien gibberish.
I think that's hilarious to me.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh yeah, that's right. It's just reuse the same voice lines over and over.
Yeah, but no,
They're stupid kids. They're not gonna find out the difference.
they're never. Jokes on them. We had way too much time on our hands. But yeah, I think I do enjoy like the little kid stuff. It is kind of dumb that one girl is there with the blowpipe, and she has all of her
No
friends.
one tried to warn her.
Yeah, no one was gonna warn her or try to. I mean, the darts don't really do that. It took like 50 of them to bring that guy down, but like no one tried to bring up that like, hey, the guy you were poking at got up and he has a. I mean, even if they don't understand what a gun is, they're still like he got up.
Yeah,
And then
I feel like that warrants a warning.
yeah, for a sec, like I thought I heard someone say like Casa, which is his name, like versus
Yeah, that's supposed
Cassian.
to be like his sister.
That's his. No, that's his name. Because he gets.
Well, yeah, no,
that's
the
his
sister
real
is
name.
saying
Yeah.
Casa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought because I thought like when they were doing that, they were like blaming him for that. I was like, there are 50 other people that could have been watching her back. Why are they? This is not his fault. But I think it's more like of just like, oh no, Casa, hurry up, we gotta move. So it's there are a few like kind of confusing moments, but I think for the most part, like the kid stuff, like you can still understand everything without everything needing to be spelled out for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And plus, also, like, it does, like, whenever at the end, whenever it shows, like, Marva, like, taking him away, like, I mean, yeah, she makes a good point, like, hey, they killed, like, a Republic officer, like, they'll come down here and, like, arrest or kill all of them. Like, she makes a good point.
Yeah.
But what she does is still kind of, like, morally questionable. It's like,
She
did
kidnaps a kid.
Yeah. Essentially kidnap a kid away from his family.
His
Yeah,
people.
basically.
I'm honestly surprised he's not more upset at, and maybe I'm sure there's more to like the flashback scenes, because I'm honestly surprised he's not more upset at her, because like he's like, okay, yes, you saved me, but I have a sister.
But you also took me away from my sister.
like the
only
rest of my
family I
guy,
had.
like the rest of my essentially family. So it'll be interesting to see like why does he actually still consider her his mother? Like, why is he okay with this? It's not like she took him as a baby. He's like around maybe 10, maybe almost teen. So he's like well conscious enough. He remembers all these things. So it's just like, why are you okay with her taking you away? Because clearly you did not go willingly when you were a kid. She drugged you. She knocked you out.
Yeah.
She hit you with the space chlorophene. So
Chloroform.
yeah, chloroform. Sorry, you know what I meant. So that'll be interesting development. But moving on from that, that was pretty much a lot of. Episode 2 is a lot of just filler stuff, and then episode 3 is kind of. That's when it all comes together. And I want to start this off just because it's the thing that's on my mind. And I think it's the thing that's on Seth's mind too. Throughout the series, we've kind of seen a bit more of these officers, and Seth's been talking like the main ones in charge are just so full of themselves, they don't know what they're doing, and they're gonna get their people like just killed.
They think they know what they're doing.
They think they know what they're doing, but
they get
don't.
in way over their head.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And what's What's interesting to me, I think this was the first time in Star Wars I felt bad when the hero shot the villain. Like, because normally we see stormtroopers, we see droids,
Stormtroopers aren't people.
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, or first order. I mean, those are people inside
At
those
least,
helmets.
basically, like, stormtroopers and clone troopers weren't people until the Clone Wars series.
Yeah,
Or until, like...
or
and
like
then
Finn showed
stormtroopers
up,
were, like,
yeah.
never people
But
until...
even
I mean, the
after that,
First Order troopers became, like... Because they actually had, Finn as a character arc and stuff like that. Or, well, he should have had a character arc. Anyway.
Yeah, but
That's a discussion for another time.
But even when that happened, at no point you're watching it and you're like, oh, I felt bad that Rey just shot 2 dudes in the head. Like, no, because they have helmets on, and those aren't real people.
And they're not Finn, so...
And they're not Finn. But the difference between this, even if it wasn't a character that had a voice, I felt bad for these guys because in earlier scenes you see them, or you see just regular guys of just like, I'm just trying to do my job, but the higher ups come and now I'm getting forced to this dirt planet. And it just feels like regular people. So when I see like Cassian shoot one of these guys, I'm like, hold up, that was an office worker. Like, that guy does not want to be here. He's doing this because he like needs to get a paycheck. And now he's dead. So this was the first time, like, I felt bad for the grunts. And because there's the sergeant and the lieutenant that are just, I wouldn't feel bad if they died. And then, where is his? It is the one, I think his code, it's North 1 is his code name. But it's the one, like, black officer who's, like, kind of a bit more in charge. And... you see after he's kind of like, all right, guys, we don't need to harass the civilians this much. Like, let's get moving. And then I only know it because I'm looking at the IMDb thing, North 3 he shoots a civilian who's just running towards
the guy
him.
walking up.
Yeah,
because he's an
like,
idiot.
His captain takes the gun from him and just like, you are going back to the ship. It's like, well, I'm doing my job. And it's like, I don't care. You're unstable. Go. And I was like, that felt really real. Like, if there wasn't a laser blast that came out of the gun, and that was just a normal...
instead of it just being like, Psh, we got him.
Yeah, no.
just like,
or just like,
oh,
yeah,
we're
good,
so
yeah.
evil.
Yeah, no, it's like, no, that's like, it feels like there are real people just trying to get by, and then they're like, oh, this dude has explosives and charges, and so I kind of feel bad when
and they're being led by like an idiot.
Yeah, we're just being led by just a big old idiot.
Just an overconfident person. So
yeah, so it's interesting, and I kind of hope that like this group does stay together and eventually just kind of like just come to their senses and it's like we're just mute. Yeah. Like, I'm quitting. Like, I'm just leaving.
They don't pay me enough for this shit.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm surprised we didn't see any of that. Of just someone just like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. I don't even like this job. But yeah, that was a lot of that. Seth, I know you wanted to talk about. How did you feel about this police force?
One is kind of interesting to mention. I think back to that first episode where like the older commanding officer dude or whatever is like, let's not make a big fuss about it. Those who got killed were jerks anyways. Yeah. We don't want the Empire coming here.
They were in a bar that they shouldn't be, and they were drinking on the clock. So like,
that they shouldn't be
bury it.
Yeah, that they shouldn't afford. So it was very.
I kind of like.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Because it's like a weird sort of more morally like grayish area. It's like, yes, technically what we're doing is illegal, but we don't want the Empire to come here. And it's like, oh yeah, that's true. It's like it's a very weirdly believable kind of evil where it's just like we have our vices and we just don't want the Empire to make things even worse than they already are.
It feels very realistic of just like what's easier to do, sweep this under the rug or, deploy forces and get even more people killed. Like, no, I mean, and like make a big fuss. Like, it's totally believable this dude's understanding, but you're watching the main villain of this, the sergeant, and you're just like, he's not buying any of this. He's getting pissed.
Yeah. And like it's kind of, and like at the same time, his motivations are at least somewhat understandable here. It's just like, yeah, like this is still the law being broken. 2 people were murdered. We should be investigating this.
Yeah.
But his reaction is just like way overblown and obviously not well thought out at all. Where he's like,
Yeah.
we're just to spend on this populace with like a armed like pretty much military convoy,
Yeah.
and then surely nothing bad's gonna happen. They're gonna surrender to us immediately. It's like, no, you just walked right into like all hell breaking loose.
Yeah.
I like that. Like I said, I like this this like dynamic of like, it's interesting that in this Star Wars show about fighting the Empire, in the first 3 episodes, we have not seen a lick of them yet.
Yeah.
There has been no stormtroopers. There have been no Imperial officers. It is just these little dweebs. And it will probably highlight, and probably what I'm predicting is by the time the Empire actually does show up, you'll see like where they're way better than these idiots. Is what I'm predicting, at least.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully they're not as...
But then again,
Hopefully
this
it'll
is
still be like
stormtroopers
early
we're
enough
talking
that like we'll have some like some of the stormtroopers, like some of the stormtrooper commanders still be like clones.
That'd
I
be
don't know.
interesting.
It's 5 BBY. Have they phased out the clones yet?
I'm not sure. Honestly, also, I will say, when it showed up and, like, the thing started and I saw that number, I was like, look, I'm a big Star Wars fan, but I will never in my life be able to keep track of the freaking years and this weird
BB-1
year
is before
system
the Battle
that
of
they
Yavin.
have.
I think Obi-Wan
Oh.
took place 10 years before the Battle of Yavin. So at that point, yeah, clones should definitely be phased out, because based on the clone that we saw in there,
Yeah.
he was old.
Well, also, I mean, just given,
Pretty
because
old.
I just base it off, like, how
So,
old characters are.
BBY stands for Before Battle of Yavin. I thought it stood for Before Big Yeezus.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Before
No, it's before Battle
Yeah.
of Yavin.
I'm thinking, like, okay, it can't be...
Or at least, like, we base our interpretation of the timeline off of when the original Star Wars, the first, just like the destruction of the first Death Star.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but I'm
So,
also
like,
thinking,
Oh,
like...
I'm such a
so
nerd.
everything-
Anyway, continue.
so
Yeah.
that means like everything in the prequels is BBY, right? Like
Correct.
because that's all. Okay.
Yes, and the first 2, or like the very beginning of like New Hope, but
Okay.
but yeah, it can't be too far. At this point, it's pretty like the Empire is well established. Pretty much, clones are all wiped out, or at least phased out of the Empire. Because also, Cassian isn't that much older in. I mean, we don't know his exact age in Rogue One, but just looking at the physical actor, he can't be like he can't be like 20 or 30 years later in Rogue One. Like he's not that much older. So max 10, 15, but even that feels like stretching it. From, that many years from Rogue One. So I don't think it's
Yeah, like I think this is technically like what 4 or 5 years before Rogue One is like what the show description is or something like that.
some,
It should be at least 5.
yeah,
We don't know if Rogue One. Rogue One ends with immediately starting into
Yeah.
Episode 4, so I assume
Right.
it takes place within the same year.
yeah, I would hope it would take place. It takes
so
place
yeah.
20 minutes later. So
Okay, yeah. I just looked up on
I would hope it's the same year.
Wikipedia. Yeah, so what the events of Rogue One happened in 0 BBY, so the year, the same year.
So it is 5 years. Okay.
So, and he was born 26 years before, so he's supposed to be 21 in this show, if it's 5 years BBY. He was born 26 BBY on Canary.
He's a very.
Man, I wish I looked that good when I was 21.
I'm pretty sure.
Same.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I wish I looked that good at any age.
I mean, obviously the real problem is I'm not Diego Luna, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but that was the big thing in 3 was like all these police coming over. But the other kind of like reckoning to take the title is the fact that Luthen, who is Steven Skarsgård's character, and Andor himself, they actually meet, and this is where we start getting sense of like, okay, this is what the show's about. Like, not all these scraps and these deals. Like, okay, I'm trying to form a rebellion, and I'm more interested in you than this special fancy box that you stole out of a ship.
MacGuffin.
Yeah, the MacGuffin box that you almost get yourself killed over, even though I keep telling you I
Yeah.
don't care about it. But I think this will also be a pretty interesting, mentor-learner dynamic. But unfortunately, given how most of the time that goes in Star Wars, I don't. My kind of early prediction now is Skarsgård is not going to make it through this entire season.
Well, I mean, we don't see him in Rogue One, so.
Yeah, so I don't see him make it. I mean, I guess he could escape, but or just get out of it. But yeah, I don't. Future is not
He
bode
said,
well
I'm too old
him.
for this shit.
Yeah, just like
I
just
will
feel like
say
we're
this
tired.
much: it has been confirmed that like there is going to be a Andor season 2 already. So we do know that.
Yeah. Which is interesting. They do that a lot where they're already like, yeah, we get like multiple seasons before they even see how people reacted to the first couple of them.
I thought also this show was supposed to be scheduled for like 4 seasons or something, and they broke it.
Really?
It was something like that.
Wow.
That's
Don't
extreme
quote me
even
on
for
that
Star
quite
Wars.
yet, but
That's a chunky season. That's a real chunky season.
I would be very, especially given that like these seasons are a lot longer
okay.
than.
so
even the
quick Google
Mandalorian.
search.
Yeah.
So I asked just how many seasons is Andor? Andor is supposed to be 5 seasons apparently. Andor TV shows. I'll read this. You guys continue.
Okay. 5's a.
All right.
I'm gonna be very interested to see 5 seasons because one of the things I was like going to lead to is it's kind of ballsy to put a lot of resources and effort into a show like this because not to say I don't like Cassian Andor or that I don't like Rogue One, but
he wasn't like a fan favorite.
he wasn't the main. He wasn't even the main character. He was a side character.
He was a side character in that movie, and he wasn't even like the fan favorite. I would probably say it was like Chirrut or anyone, like the blind dude who was like kind of the favorite in that movie.
Like, it's not like this is an Ahsoka who like a very well established character. It's not some kind of Jedi, or it's not even like Mandalorian where it's like brand fresh new start. So he might as well just be a new character. But it's really interesting that they're putting a lot of effort and a lot of energy into this guy for some reason. Like of how vast Star Wars is and all the characters.
It must have been a hell of a pitch. Is the best thing I can think of. Is what compelled this to existence.
That's why I'm like, there has to be. I very much see the thing. It's like, okay, a much more grittier, darker Star Wars. So I'm interested to see like there has to be something else that like really drives this, because if they're already thinking, if Randy's right, 5 seasons, that sounds extreme to me. But if they're thinking like multiple seasons of this, like there has to be some big plan for this character, because there's not like a huge. I'm not gonna lie. Even when I first saw the announcement, I saw Andor and I didn't even because I kept for the longest time I called him Cassian. So I didn't even realize who he was talking about. I was like, is that a planet or something? Like, what is this? And I was like, oh, that's his name. That's Cassian's name.
This is only one letter away from Endor. They could have made one that just
I thought
Endor. And
that's what I thought.
Ewoks.
I was like, have I just been spelling this wrong? Like, there's. But
listen, I will take that. Let's take a whole Disney Plus series about just Ewoks. It's called Endor.
they did that a while ago. One of like the first Star Wars TV shows was
they did.
Ewoks.
Okay.
All right.
So, it was originally planned to have 5 seasons, pretty much 1 year per season, leading up to the events of Rogue One. It has now been changed to 3 seasons with 12 episodes. It said for the second season is also confirmed to have 12. I assume it's going to be 12, for each season.
That's
so
why,
the third season, I'd assume it'll also 12.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like, and not to say that like more episodes means they're, one show is better than the other, but looking at some other shows, Mandalorian, it had 8, and then I'm pretty sure I'm gonna look look this up real quick. Loading. Season 2, also 8. Boba Fett, freaking, what was it, 6 or 7? 7. So, and Kenobi is much shorter. Now, Kenobi is a kind of a different story. It's a more focused narrative.
Yeah, I mean, it was written as a movie to begin with.
Yeah, so that's different, but still, that's a lot of resources going into a character not a lot of people, not to insult the man, but, not a lot of people cared about. I don't think I talked to anyone when they were announcing Star Wars shows and, what's the one that you're excited about? I don't think anyone mentioned Andor.
I feel like, I feel like I'm the biggest Rogue One fan out of all of us, and I still feel like it's just I don't know if I ever felt like oh, I really needed an Andor show.
Yeah, nobody. Nope. So that's why I'm there has to be something that we're not seeing yet, or some big reveal, or something that is really gonna drive people into this, because that's a lot of screen time. That's a lot of seasons. To already,
yeah, I think it was probably it was best to condense it to 3. I say that we're only 3 episodes in, so how can I? Know?
Yeah,
but
that's the kind of thing. Is man, what do they I feel like in that case they're really gonna have to sell us on the coming stuff, because this has been enjoyable so far, but nothing here that's made me justify that made me think oh, this absolutely justifies 2 more seasons.
Yeah, no. At most, I was
and
okay,
we're only 3 episodes in.
Yeah. But that's why I'm there has to be there's definitely has to be more reveal. So I guess, going into the future, for those who aren't aware, we were recording this before episode 4 comes out. So what are your guys' hopes, not just for the next episode, but just, where do you guys want this series to go? Is there a planet you want to see? Is there a storyline you want, or maybe even a character you want to see, or just any thoughts on that? I'll start with Randy.
I kind of don't want there to be too many cameos, or actually I'm fine with there being no cameos, and these are all characters that were not particularly known. I know we have Mon Mothra.
Yes.
To show up in the show, because if I think she's supposed to show up next episode,
something like that,
maybe, but she's supposed to show up in the series. So we're supposed to have some political stuff happening in the Imperial Senate. So I expect her to show up, but other than that, of course, I want to see fucking Jar Jar at the Imperial Senate. Misa proposed. This plan sucks.
All right.
So that's but in all seriousness, other than her, and then maybe Bail Organa, maybe. I don't know. We just had him in Obi-Wan.
Yeah, Kenobi.
But it could be interesting to still have him.
So, and I'll let you answer, but out of curiosity, just because I don't remember it well enough, when we meet Cassian, does he knows everyone? Cassian doesn't have to be introduced to characters like Donnie Yen's character, or Saw Gerrera, or KS or K2SO. He knows them already.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I want there to be K2SO. But no, he does have to get introduced to Donnie Yen and
Baze, his buddy.
Yeah.
Because they literally run into him at that planet that they drop down to. So they run into each other.
Okay, so
they don't know each other before
that was my question. I was obviously he can't run to Jyn Erso, because that would make Rogue One not make sense. But that means okay, so we can't see those characters from Rogue One in here because we've seen their meeting. It wouldn't make sense. Okay, that was my thinking. I was how much setup for Rogue One could they even do? So I get K2SO probably could show up.
Do we think that K2SO and be emo.
Uh,
Same droid.
I saw this coming from Randy. I was just like, oh god,
I like that. I like that fan theory.
that'd be pretty funny.
That'd be pretty
That's all I'm
funny.
gonna say.
I'm down for it. I'd be down for it. But Seth, where do you want this series to go?
To be honest, I don't really have a plan. The thing is just maybe give us something a little bit more compelling with the characters. I mean, and I'm sure that they will. I don't really have specific plans, and I do agree with Randy. Don't really try to make this cameo heavy or anything. I don't really think I think what's making this show work so far is it doesn't feel like it's trying to connect itself too much with everything else. So it's like that's kind of nice. It feels outside of Rogue One, it feels largely self-contained.
Yeah.
I think. So I like that. One of the things I will say though is, and this isn't just really aimed at like Andor specifically, but just Disney Plus shows in general. I really like the set design in Andor. I think getting outside of I think this show is doing more natural like environments and
It is. There's more like natural sets rather than the volume in this.
Yeah, and the name of the big CGI bubble that they typically use.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that, and I would like to see them use that more going forward. Like not just for Star Wars, but also for like the Marvel shows in general too. It's just like a little less CGI, a little bit more of this. I like it.
Yeah, a little more practical. I agree.
Yeah, the volume has its place and stuff like that. But I think it was a great tool to especially use during trying to film things in the pandemic era.
It's good for things like, you know, The Mandalorian, where there are a bit more CGI characters, and it is a bit more of like weirder worlds, more action and stuff. But I feel like for this is a down to earth, gritty kind of more story. So I think it's better not used. Yeah, honestly, thinking about it, if there weren't blaster bolts, like, and they used regular guns, and they didn't mention the Empire at like the last episode, you would barely recognize this as a Star Wars show. It would just be, honestly, if the main character wasn't called Cassian Andor, this could, you could put any title on this and no one would associate it with Star Wars. Like, they would just be some type of like space noir. And honestly, I think that's actually a positive on it. It makes it stand out from all the other shows. That's why it would be weird to compare it, even when this is over, to the other shows, because it doesn't have the same feel. It doesn't have the same look. It's gritty. It's dirty. And yeah, the only other time we've seen something like this is Rogue One. So yeah, I'm interested. I think I'm interested in the show. Obviously, well, we were definitely going to keep watching no matter what. Before we start kind of like wrapping up, is there anything that like you guys wanted to bring up, wanted to talk about? We talked about a lot of the show, and there are only 3 episodes, so there's not too much to get onto. But Seth, what are you got any closing thoughts?
I think it's a promising start. I know that there's been some general reactions online, and some people are really blown away by it and stuff like that. I'm not quite there yet. I enjoy what we got, and I'm looking forward to more, and that's really about as much as I can say. Nothing about the past 3 episodes have made me feel super strongly about it.
Okay. Randy, what about you?
That's it.
Okay. Randy, what about you? Same thoughts or?
I'd say roughly the same. Yeah, I enjoyed the first 3 episodes quite a bit, and I'm excited to see what comes next. I hope by the end of the series we get to figure out what boffins are, and that they like
why we lost so many of them.
Yeah, why we lost so many to get this information, because Rogue One didn't tell us why we lost so many boffins for this intel. So maybe this series will. Maybe we'll have our first appearance of boffins.
Is it a group? Is that like a name, or is it a species?
No, I know what it is.
It's supposed to be a species.
Okay.
No, I know it's not a species. Boffins is named for people who get absolutely wrecked by Vader, because they definitely lost a lot of them.
They lost.
Definitely did in Rogue One. Yeah. But no, and Mon Mothra is just like, many boffins gave their lives for this intel in episode 4, and we still have never met a boffin.
Or what that means. It's just a weird word. Maybe that's what she calls like those weird mushroom people head that like are always around. Like you know those weird hats that they always wear. That's what she just calls those guys.
They're the Bothans.
Their
Their job is to get absolutely wrecked by Vader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that maybe the Bothans were the friends we made along the way.
Maybe in lieu of Rogue One, they should just end this. They should just end this show with just Vader just coming in and just wrecking the crap out of Rogue One. I don't know.
And then it'll end with like Cassian like burying like a explosive or like his gun, and then someone asks me, "What's your name?" Cassian. Cassian what? Cassian Bothan. And then just walks away.
Many Bothans. That's the name of his people. They're the Bothans.
Oh my god.
Not the Canary.
Not the Canary. Yeah.
That's just a slang term. They're all.
Oh no.
He's like, Cassian, before we go on this mission, where'd you say you're from again? Well, everyone calls it this other name, but at home we call ourselves Bothans. And then like, you know, guitar solos and he like jumps out of a speeder or something.
And it jumps to black.
Yeah, just
cuts to black.
I live with this.
I'm okay with this, yes. Alright. Rise, yeah. More Bothans in Star Wars. But I think that's all the thoughts that we have. Go watch Andor. Definitely, I would say. Would all you guys like recommend it? I guess for either. Would you guys recommend? Obviously, hardcore Star Wars fans are probably gonna watch it, but like, what about someone that's not as into Star Wars? Like someone that's a bit more. I've seen the movies. I haven't kept up with the shows. Or kind of more casual fans.
Yeah, I would probably like say just, you know, you got 3 episodes, and if you can, try to stick it out for the 3 episodes. And if you can't, maybe it is time to call it quits. But at least watch that like first episode, see how you feel at the end of it.
All right. Randy, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree. I know I mentioned it at the beginning of the show. It's a little bit grittier. It has kind of a spy element to it, or I think it will develop into a more elements in it, and there's a lot of lying in it, which isn't really something in Star Wars that much, I feel. I mean, well, I guess that's a lie. You have Obi-Wan Kenobi lying to Luke and being like, you know, hey,
and there's
Vader.
frequent uses of disguises and stuff like that in Star Wars as well.
I suppose, but I guess just like so many like flat out like, hey, this is what you're going to tell people because we're friends.
Use of deception.
A little bit more covert type talk.
So I think it opens the door to a new audience that might be like, yeah, Star Wars is, you know, it's that big pop culture thing, and like I've seen some of the movies, but like whatever.
Yeah. It might feel a bit too kiddie for some people. Yeah.
Yeah. So this might open that door to a new audience.
The best way to open a door to a new audience. Here, watch this man shoot someone in cold blood, like this defenseless person.
You know, you have different things for different people. You had Baby Yoda, you know, the child bringing a whole new audience, and now you're gonna have this.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the cut of the Mandalorian where we get to see that dude like cut in half by that door. I want to see that R-rated version of that.
See, if that happened in this show, we would see that man.
I'm sure someone's already edited that together. I'm sure that exists. I'll look for it.
I hope so, because like weirdly enough, like that'd be like a really cool scene.
See, that's the difference between Mandalorian and this show. If someone does that in this show, I feel like we'll see them like split in half, or at least see their severed arm, or full.
Nah, it's Disney. No one loses appendages.
Are you sure? This is Star Wars. Everyone loses appendages. That's like the whole point of the show.
In Book of Boba Fett, what's his name? I feel so bad. It's Black something.
Black Chrysanthemum.
Black Chrysanthemum?
Yeah, that dude ripped off a dude's arm.
He ripped off, and then beats someone with it.
Okay. Well, I guess I was saying this just because, like, at least in the mainline movies, no one lost a limb, as far as I'm aware. I'm 99% certain.
Which mainline movies?
The Disney ones. Sequels.
Did no one lose it?
And that's why Rey Skywalker is the best Skywalker. She
has both her arms, yeah.
All right, we'll close on that, and everyone that likes Star Wars will now be mad at me.
Yep, fair enough. All right, so now we move on to everyone's favorite point that Randy always forgets about, which is our fresh picks of the week. where we tell you guys what we've either been playing, listening to, or watching in between episodes. So, Seth, how about we start with you? What have you been up to?
So I recently finished an anime series that is a bit older. Came out in 2011 or 2010ish, so probably people already know about it. I think it's fairly. It's called Steins Gate, but I finally got around to watching it, so it's new to me. Dang it! And it's a pretty good show. The elevator pitch about it is basically about a group of essentially amateur scientists developing time travel, and it starts off small as like only being able to send text messages back to themselves about like a couple of weeks, and then it slowly advances from there. And it's really neat. It's got very interesting, if somewhat frustrating and eccentric characters. And what I mean by that is the characters kind of have like little quirks about them, and they admittedly, and it might be on purpose by the show, they're kind of annoying at first, but it starts to make more sense of why they're that way later on. And it becomes, and I like it because it goes from annoying to endearing. The time travel concept is very cool. I like the fact that it starts off as very primitive and it escalates from there. And the show also goes to some pretty dark places about time travel, and there's definitely some psychological torment and just awful things that happen. I'll just like leave those kind of vague because I don't want to spoil it too much. It's a good show. I will say that watch out. There's Steins Gate, there's Steins Gate Zero, and then there's Steins Gate the movie. The movie's set after this season, so you'll probably want to watch Steins Gate first. And Steins Gate Zero is, I haven't watched it yet, but from what I understand, it's a prequel/sequel. It's time travel. They can kind of make it whatever they want it to be. So there you go. Go watch Steins Gate.
Where did you watch this? Like, where could people see this?
I watched it on Crunchyroll, and I will say that, like, for Steins Gate, while it may not be one of my top 10 animes like I see frequently on like maybe other people's lists, like it's one of the top 10 animes on like my anime list or whatever, I will say that it may not be high up there for me, but I can definitely see why it is. It has really good characters, a really interesting sort of like, the way I've heard it is sort of like jigsaw puzzle story, which is like you're seeing the pieces but they don't make sense until later on.
Okay.
So I recommend it. It's a good show.
All right. All right, Randy, what about you? What have you been up to?
All right, so this past Friday I actually was in Nashville, and I went and saw probably my favorite band. Yeah, I'll say they're my favorite band, at least as the moment. Highly Suspect. They're a rock band. They just released their new album called The Midnight Demon Club. And so yeah, I went and saw them. It was a lot of fun. I ended up, it's a rock concert, so I screamed, I cried. It was great. It was fantastic. Got two new shirts afterward, and I think probably my favorite song off their new album. Kind of hard to choose. We'll go with The Sound. Either The Sound or Pink Lullaby.
Okay.
But yeah, the album is The Midnight Demon Club, and it's by Highly Suspect, so if you're into rock, give it a check out. Check it out.
Yeah. I would love to also go watch that, but
yeah,
I would love to also
Spotify, YouTube, it's on, you know how to look up music, people.
And then buy the album.
You can't find it?
Go buy the album.
Yeah, or do that. Sure, support the creator.
Get it on iTunes or something.
Yeah. All right. Well, as for me, just to, bring back our favorite way to buy games that Randy still doesn't have. This is a game that is now on Game Pass. It originally actually came out last year, exclusive to PlayStation, but because of Bethesda's deals with Xbox, it is now available on Xbox, and that is Deathloop. So this game has been out for a while, but for Xbox players, we are just now being able to get that, and it is on Game Pass. So if you do not have Game Pass, that's another reason to get it. Hint, hint, Randy. But yeah, it's a very interesting game. If you like Dishonored, it is made by the same people, and it is very Dishonored-like, except now with roguelike elements, which essentially means if you die, then you will get sent back to the very start of the game. I've only started recently getting more into roguelikes because at first I wasn't the biggest fan of them, but this game has really got me hooked. Ever since I've started, I've wanted to do nothing but play it. It has really interesting concepts because the whole idea is it's about, again, like a time travel thing. Think Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise, or other, shows and stuff with the similar concepts of you die and you just are living the same day over and over again. So I think it is executed very well in this video game, and just the gameplay itself is really fun. The story has been very interesting, and it has a pretty fun mechanic where you can actually play as the villain and like join either your friends or random people's game and like kill them as they're like trying to progress in their single player mode. Now this mode can be turned off, but it actually is pretty fun, at least in my opinion, going through like single player, and then it's like, hey, now you have to like fight a real person, which is pretty enjoyable. So I will say the beginning's a bit hard just because you have to go through a lot of tutorials, but once you get through that, the main gameplay loop is really, really fun. So highly recommend Deathloop. Definitely go check it out. I'm not finished with it yet, but I'll probably be like just grinding through it really fast. It's been very enjoyable.
It's also got a pretty poppin' soundtrack.
It is. That's another thing. Yeah, it has a great soundtrack.
All right, so Drew, hear me out on this. This is something I thought when I first played the game, and now that you've played it some, because of the music and because of the style, just from a gameplay perspective, not the story obviously, but from a gameplay perspective, I feel like this is getting the closest to the feel of a Cowboy Bebop game as I can imagine. Outside of the powers, it's mostly the music and the action and the style.
Yeah, and because it's got that like, it's futuristic, but then also like 80s or 90s feel, like kind of funky. I could fit, yeah. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So that's also another, if you haven't watched Cowboy Bebop, you should. But if you are a fan of that, then you probably
should watch the Netflix series.
Yes, yeah, totally. The live action one is what we're talking about, not the anime. Sarcasm, but yeah, check out Deathloop and Cowboy Bebop. Might as well throw that one in there. But that is everything for today. I want to thank both Seth and Randy for joining me on this episode.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I love talking about Terminator.
Yes. Oh, you thought of another sci-fi show. Good job. Only took you an hour.
Yeah.
We love callbacks. All right, and thank all of you for listening, and stay safe out there.